Welcome back, guys, to our Hobby Basics 101. This is part 2, so in this one we're going to be talking about what's beneath our model's feet, which is the bases. So there's a couple of ways to do this. There's a simple way which we'll go through, which purely just gets the model done so that it can be painted. There's also a more detailed way, which is essentially like framing a picture. You know, you don't just frame it in something simple. You want to make it look nice. So we'll go into a bit more of a detailed method. There is another way, which is to use prefabricated bases, and if you have a look in the description down there below, we've actually already done one for a Zone Mortalis base. So what we'll do, we'll head down to the painting table and we'll get straight into this. Alright guys, so we're all set up to start doing these bases. So these are going to be the basic ones, and we're going to do them on these Infernus Marines from the Leviathan box set, the Start Collecting box set, your starter box sets. They're basically the current plebs of the Space Marine range for all your newcomers into the hobby. So we've got some sand here. It's just a fine to medium grit sand. You could use, you know, like a playground sand or something like that as well. Woodland Scenics provide great ballasting stuff. That's another option. You want to get some PVA. Now, you want the best stuff you can get your hands on. In this case, I've grabbed some Mod Podge. It really is the best on the market. But if you can't afford that or don't have access to it, you can just use some woodworking glue, good quality PVA glue that you can find from a hardware store. I tend to avoid going for something from a cheap store or a cheap craft glue. It just doesn't tend to hold up as well. I would recommend this stuff though if you can get your hands on it. So what we'll do first off, we'll get our models over here and put some PVA on a palette. We're just going to paint the whole top of the base with PVA. Try not to hit the rim if you can. Just keep it on the top of the base, avoiding the feet and avoiding any other details that are sculpted on top of that base, be it rocks or like that models might be standing on. Just use the tip of the brush to just edge in towards the edge. Once you've done that, just spread it out a little bit more. Make sure you've got really good coverage. You've got everything. You don't see any black through it. We'll then bring the model over and just dunk it straight in our sand. It's as simple as that. While it's sitting there, you can put your brush down so you've got two hands free again. Lift it up, and what we'll do, we'll give it a tap off just to get all that loose stuff off the top of the base. Once that's done, we want that rim to look nice and clean. So we'll just take our thumb or our finger and just wipe around there, just any sand that might have dribbled over the side onto a bit of PVA, and then just wipe that off into the container. It's fine. Now we've done that, we'll go through and we'll do the rest of the models, and we'll come back in about half an hour, an hour's time once it's dry. So now we've come back, the bases are now dry. What we're going to do, we're actually going to seal them. So we want to use our PVA again, but instead of using it straight, we're going to be mixing it with water. So as you can see, it takes a little bit of time to get it over by brush. The best bet is to bring your water pot over to where you're mixing it up, and that way you're not dropping water all over your paint spot, your paint desk and all that. Get plenty of water in there. You want it to about the consistency of milk. Give it a good stir through just to break down that PVA a bit so that it spreads equally throughout all the water. And then what we're going to do, we're going to just dab that onto the base. All over wherever you've got sand, just dab it on there. It doesn't matter if it goes over on the rim a little bit. If you get a little bit on the bottom of the model, it's not the end of the world. Just dab it everywhere. You want this saturated. You want it to look white like normal PVA glue, but like I said, we've got it watered down, so it's going to run in between the sand and really lock that into the base. It's just going to prevent any of it coming off through wear and tear of playing with your miniatures. We'll go through, we'll do that on the rest of the squad. And what I like to do here, I like to leave it overnight to dry before moving on to any further steps. So we'll get that done now, and basically you're ready to undercoat from this point. But what we're going to do, we're going to take it a step further. We're actually going to now move on and have a look at a different type of basing. This is a bit more advanced. So here I've got my base, I've got a piece of cork, and I've got a small sort of ground tile that I've 3D printed myself. What we're going to do, we're going to create a detailed base to match the detail of the model. So first things first, grab your super glue and just lather it on the base. Now in this case, I only sort of want to cover 2/3 of my base with the cork. So I'll just put it over 2/3 of the base. I'll then put my cork down and hold it for about 3 seconds just to let that super glue take. Put plenty of pressure on there to create a good bond. Once that's done, as you can see, we can lift the whole base up by that piece of cork. So we've got that dry, we've wiped our bench down so that we've got a nice clean area to work again. We're now going to go ahead and trim all that excess off. Some people like tearing it, but for the effect I'm going for on this base, I actually would rather cut it off nice and neat. So I'll take a bunch of it off looking down from the top and just sort of rough it in. And then what I'll do, I'll flip it over and just neaten it up by going from the bottom. As I'm cutting, I'm actually trying to follow that bevel on the edge of the base here. I don't really want it to overhang because I'm going to do something a little bit extra to this later on. So I'll trim it down, I'll sort of narrow it in a little bit. Then we can push all that stuff to the side just so we've got a clean space to work again. And we can bring over our tile. I don't want to use the whole tile, I only want to use a corner of it. So I'll measure out and work out which corner and whereabouts on the base I want to place it. Once I've decided that I'm happy with where it is, I'll pick up my hobby knife and I'll just make a cut into the cork. That'll be my first cut. So it'll give me a nice straight line that I can identify through that rough texture of the cork. Then I'll just turn the base around and follow it on the other side, just to take that triangle out where I want that base to sit. I'll come in and flick that out from underneath, and then I've got a nice clean open area for that tile to actually sit into. So now you've actually created 2 textures on your base rather than just one. It's just a really nice manufactured feel to it. It feels like it's meant to be there. So what we're going to do now, we're going to come in and start cutting at our tile that we've 3D printed. Now this is resin, it will break very, very easily with a bit of pressure. So just make your first cut, and like before with the cork, we're going to just slowly work down at it until we've got it to the shape and the size we want. This might mean you might have to take it away from the base just to get it in a little bit so it's not overhanging. But just keep at it, just carefully and carefully and carefully cut. You can find, especially here as you can see, I'm only taking little bits out, and it's actually super easy to just chip these bits out now with those side cutters. We'll just keep going until we're happy with where it sits. Once we've done that, we'll bring in our super glue again and we'll put a good dollop in there. We'll put our tile down, or our remnants of our tile, and we'll just hold it there until it sticks, about 5-6 seconds. Once we're done with that, we can clean up our hobby area again and move on to the next step. Now, this step's a bit of fun. We're actually going to texture all these little areas of the base that are still black, are still plain. And what we're going to use this. It's Astro Granite, so it's a texture paint from Games Workshop or Warhammer. It really is good stuff. So as you can see, I'm not happy with the way that the sides of it are sitting. So I'm just taking my knife and just scraping around the edge of it, getting rid of that sharp corner that was there. Because I'm actually going to not just use this on those flat bare bits of the base. I'm going to texture a lot of this area. So we're going to have sort of 3 textures poking through on this base. Firstly, start off with those plain areas. We'll scoop a bit out of the pot and just start smothering it on with our scraping tool, our basing tool. I'm going to then keep going around the edge of the cork. I don't want to have that lip of cork exposed everywhere. I want to have it look dirty, not just like a piece of cork that's been thrown on a base. So what we're going to do is just keep going right round the edge of that base. If we get it on the rim, the same as before, just wipe it off. If it's a big dollop, as you saw, I can wipe it on my thumb. It does wash off quite easily on your skin. So what we'll do, we'll just work our way around, just keep pushing it around, create a bit of texture in it as you're going. It really defines the look if you just jab at it and give it little pokes and prods here and there. It creates a little bit more texture again. And all of a sudden, you've created this amazing looking piece for your model to stand on with little to no effort at all. I have used a resin tile on mine, but you don't have to. You can just use a leftover couple of bits of model, bits of terrain, something that was included in the kit. You know, I know the Imperial Guard tanks often get little extra bits in the bottom of their tanks that aren't used for all the builds. You could cut some of that up and use that instead. It doesn't matter what you use, but it's just that extra bit of texture apart from the cork. Once I've done around the edge of the base, I'm actually going to come in with a brush, and where I've got the join between my object and my cork, I'm actually going to add this in there as well and create a little bit of a like a dirt build up around the edge of it. It just really sells the effect a little bit more. Once that's done, this base could be left as is. We don't have to go any further. But as you all know, I like to take it a little bit further and make it a piece of art. So what we're going to do, we're going to look into how we can change it further. It's a simple step, and we'll get to it in a moment once we've washed out our brush and finished up with this Astro Granite. Alright, so we're back. We've got our Astro Granite down, we've cleaned up, everything's done. We're actually going to grab some guitar strings. So this is actually a low E string. So it's a nice one because it's not just a plain string, it's got the coils around the edge that just give it that extra little bit of texture. What we'll do, we'll cut a bit off and we'll bend it to a shape that we want. Now, just remember, you're going to want a fairly long probe to go inside your cork. So just bend, say, a third of the way in. Bring your super glue over and we'll just put a dollop of super glue on the end just so that it fits and stays in that cork. We don't want this to come out as we're painting it or playing games with it. So that little bit of super glue will just help it stick in there. Grab your side cutters back and just use them like a pair of pliers and we'll start pushing it in the side. So far that's looking great, but I mean one just looks a little bit funny, so why don't we go and bend another one, cut it off to a length that we want, and we'll do the same thing again. Just a little dollop of super glue, pick somewhere else on the base and poke it through the side of that cork and you've got it in. It looks great. As you can see here though, I found a bad bit of cork. I can't get it in there easily. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to grab it again and I'm just going to try again. It's a good idea to be doing this while the Astro Granite is still a bit wet, because if you stuff it up, you could just push that down and you haven't lost or broken any of your additional texture we did before. So just keep going until you find a spot where it goes in around where you want it to be. Get it pushed in, and that's it. We're done. You can add as many or as few of these as you like around your base. You can even put them on the top of your base if you wish. It all just adds extra texture. As you can see, we're done. It hasn't taken very long. That's only taken not even, 5-6 minutes. We now have a fantastic looking base to put a model on that really complements the details of the models. Well, that's it. They're the two types of bases that I normally use. I'll chuck up a picture up here of a Zone Mortalis base. That's a prefabricated plastic base, so I mean, obviously with that, pull it out the box, build your model, glue it straight on, you're done. I kind of like doing custom bases a little bit more. They're a bit more fun. They give you a chance to add a bit of personality to your model and really make it stand out. If you don't like either of those, there are plenty other options out there. A quick Google search comes up with thousands of basing ideas. There's different texture techniques that you can get from Games Workshop. You can get all your different grits and that from doing model railways and stuff like that as well. So there's plenty of options out there. It really is endless opportunities, but it can be the most fun. So make sure you take your models to the next level and get those bases looking really nice before we start moving on. Next time we'll have a look at undercoating or priming our models ready for painting. Till then, have a good one. Keep up with the other videos on the channel. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe down the bottom if you like what you saw, and we'll see you next one.